Hello and welcome to this session on a senior doctor's experience. We are extremely lucky that we have Dr. Seema Srivastava she's taken some of her time out of her incredibly busy schedule to be interviewed. So thank you so much for joining us. First, I just want to start by asking you how would you describe your current role here and outside the trust?
Thank you, Charlie, and it's a pleasure to be here. I describe myself foremost as a clinician, as a doctor. My current role at Southmead is as a geriatrician. I work in medicine for older people, and I focus my work on what we call the front door. So that's seeing older people come through the emergency department and our admissions medical unit. I also work in what we call perioperative medicine, and I see patients who have come in with trauma, so hip fractures and other types of fractures, who are older and frailer, which I love, particularly because I work with lots of different people in the hospital, anaesthetists, surgeons, allied health professionals, junior doctors. And I guess this also helps me in my leadership role, being able to connect with different parts of the hospital, different people in the hospital. And my leadership role at North Bristol Trust is Associate Medical Director. And so I work directly with our medical director, who is the lead for all the medical staff in the hospital and part of the executive board. My specific role as Associate Medical Director is overseeing the quality improvement and patient safety programme in North Bristol Trust, and working with our teams pretty much to support people be the best they can in the work that they do, and to bring about positive change that can benefit patients, their families, and also help teams work better together.
Brilliant. That's great. And a question sort of for the F1s and sort of how did you get there? You know, what was your journey? What did your leadership journey look like?
Sure. Well, I think when I was thinking about this question, Charlie, I was thinking about actually how late in my career I started thinking about leadership, and I think it's fantastic that now things are changing and leadership is considered right at the start of a medical career. So for me, it wasn't until my later registrar years when my supervisors were sort of thinking and saying to me, well, what is going to be your thing in the future? And there were so many things that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed teaching. So at one point I thought about that as my thing, and I did a diploma in medical education, which I really enjoyed. And then later on in my, in my sort of final year of being a registrar, I got involved in quality improvement and started working on ward patient safety. And then when I was appointed as a consultant, I was fortunate enough to be nominated to participate in a Southwest Patient Safety Collaborative. That's all the acute hospitals in the southwest of England. And that was hosted by what's called the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, IHI. They're a really big organisation, very involved in global patient safety and quality improvement. And that really inspired me, and that really triggered me to think this might be my thing, and this is what gives me joy in my career and my work. And so I started leading on patient safety projects and programs, did work on falls, pressure, injuries, what we call the deteriorating patient, national early warning scores, sepsis, and really sort of that gained a lot of interest and traction in the organisation. And in 2015, our medical director felt that this was something, quality improvement, patient safety, that really needed leadership for the future of our organisation. And so a role was created for the Associate Medical Director. And It was interesting that when it was advertised, I didn't really think this was a role for me, having said what I've just said, leading all that work. And it wasn't until people started saying, "Are you applying for this?" that I kind of got over my imposter syndrome of thinking, "Oh no, that's for someone, you know, far more senior than me." And I was appointed to the role. And since then, the role has developed. We have a quality improvement team. We help support hundreds of projects each year, and it really still continues to give me joy in my work, particularly with connecting with teams and providing what I hope is support, which I very much see my leadership journey as, is supporting teams to be the best they can.
Great. And sort of following on from that, I guess, what advice would you give to an F1 who is starting their leadership journey?
I think my advice is to be curious, and to ask. Don't be shy of asking questions and saying, "Well, I don't know about this," or "Can you tell me more? Can you tell me how you got to do this role, or how did you get involved in this project?" And also, like me, possibly some people feel that they might not be in a position where they can lead work because of whatever role they're currently in or whatever hierarchy. We still organise ourselves in healthcare as much as we'd like to change that in hierarchy. But my advice is that more and more healthcare organisations are thinking that everybody has something they can offer in leadership. And I talk about leadership more as leading, so we can all adopt leading behaviours no matter where we are in our careers. So my encouragement would be to get involved, ask lots of questions, be curious, and to have that courage to go for it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and ties in really nicely actually with one of the parts of the programme, which is the followership aspect that we're doing, and the sort of skills that you can have as an F1 of managing up. So that sort of answers that question in the sense of leading even as the most junior member of the team in the sort of medical hierarchy. So sort of what does the word leadership mean to you? Some people find it quite an intimidating word. How do you interpret it?
Yeah, and I think it can be intimidating because I sort of have automatically and historically thought of it as something up here and I'm down here, and very much in terms of what our positions are. But I, as I said before, like to think of what is good leading, and for me, good leading is really deeply listening to your colleagues around you, really hearing what they've got to say, and also not so much doing and taking over and being in charge. I guess there's something about overall being in charge of things. I am in charge of a lot of things, but not controlling everything. So I'm learning more and more to give space to people so that their great ideas can flourish. And so I've got this thing in my head recently about flourishing and nourishing, and giving space for people to flourish, but to be there as the support to really nourish their ideas. Good leading is acting from a position of kindness. So not everything is plain sailing. Sometimes there are differences in opinion and perspectives, but to really think about when someone is doing something that you may not understand or is different to your view, to really think about, well, where are they coming from? What's going on for them? And to be open to that. And then finally, I think being courageous enough to show vulnerability, to be able to say, I don't know, teach me, or to be able to say, this is really hard right now for me. And there certainly have been times, particularly over the last 12 months, where I have felt, that things are really tough, and to be able to share what's going on for me, I think it gives people the space to say what's going on for them. And I think for me, that's the leading that I think is really important.
Sounds great. I think that ties in a bit to our next question, which is sort of what your core values are. I think you've obviously answered some of that question in that answer there as well.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough later on in my leadership sort of career to do a leadership program. So it goes to show you don't have to do a leadership program to become a leader. So this was a program I finished about 6 months ago called Generation Q with the Health Foundation, and I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to do a master's and really explored what my core values are in that. And so I've had quite a lot of time and 10,000 words to think about. And for me, what sort of came up was this sense of community and particularly I think it comes from my upbringing, really wanting to help people, particularly who might not have a platform to share their own voice or might be marginalised in society. And so I think over the last 12 months, we've seen quite a lot of information, some of it quite concerning, about the impact on minority ethnic groups and the disparities in healthcare in terms of people who are living in poverty. So my work at the moment is very much thinking about how can I support to that sort of really important calling. So some of the work I did during the pandemic was about listening to people who were worried about COVID, who were from minority ethnic groups, and hearing what was going on for them and thinking about what can we do, what actions can we take to support them. And more recently, with the vaccination programme, there has been a lot of information about people who may not be accessing the vaccine for very understandable reasons and concerns, and thinking about, well, what can I do in the role that I have right now to support that? And so that really sort of chimes with my values.
Perfect, that's great, thank you. Is there a change or an improvement that you've been part of that you're particularly proud of, and what was it that made it a success?
So, gosh, there's so many things I'm proud of, not necessarily because of my leadership in it, but just because of the support my team's been able to give where other people have taken that leading role. The most recent thing I've been involved with is the vaccination programme, and I was the clinical lead for the hospital hub vaccination programme at Southmead, with as all hospital hubs, and we had very limited time to get this going, and quite a historic moment. The first time, I guess, we've had hope during this really tricky time. And what made me proud about what we did is that even though it seemed at some points a really impossible task, we approached it together by thinking about who is this going to impact and who do we need to involve, because we knew that no matter what your position or title or whatever it is, we're going to need everybody to really support this work. And so really connecting with our stakeholders, so the people who need to be involved to make this change positive, was something I was really proud of. And also the ability for us to really stay true to the culture of our hospital hub, of making improvements as we go along, so really using that quality improvement approach, so everybody had a voice. If they felt during a shift that something could be done better, we would listen, we would try it out, we would take the feedback, and so people involved could really see the improvements and their feedback being counted. And gosh, there were moments where it felt like lots of stuff wasn't going right, but what I'm proud of is that we all as a team worked with kindness in our hearts, and so there was no shouting. There were a few moments where I was crying in the store cupboard, but being able to sort of really work together and know that this is tough, this is emotional work, and to show our vulnerability made it a real success.
That sounds great, and you've tied in nicely to another part of the programme as well, where we talk about quality improvement, and on the sway on that there, I sort of talk through how you might do a stakeholder analysis to work out who those people are that you need to bring along, who that people will make it a success are. So that's
it's so important. It is in terms of QI, it's the thing that people often miss out, and it's understandable why that might happen. Most of us doers as healthcare professionals, we like to just crack on, but paying attention to who is involved, who's it going to impact, who needs to know, so important.
Great. And you've talked a bit, I think, already about how you bring other people along with you in that change, and it sounds like listening and compassion are those key parts. Are there any tips that you'd have for an F1 on the ward who's starting their QI as to how they would bring people along with their change?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And when I sometimes look at my kind of calendar on my sort of Outlook, and I sort of think, you know, a week can go by and you think, well, what have I actually done? And a lot of it is connecting with people. It is having, if we can, face-to-face, you know, coffee in the staff restaurant, albeit socially distant. I do a lot of walking meetings, which is like putting my headphones and my iPhone in my pocket and walking with people whilst they're walking somewhere else, and just connecting, hearing about what's going on for them, but really being able to meet with people, whether that's face-to-face or virtual, on the telephone or on Teams, and connect with them, and find out what really matters to them, what matters most. If as a person who's being engaged with, it means that you really care and you're interested, and you're not going to just go off and do what you think. And also it helps to break down any assumptions you might have made. We all make assumptions. We all have shortcuts. So it's a human thing that is a necessity sometimes. But to be able to go in and connect with people and park your assumptions, I think is a really good first step if you want to bring people along with you.
Yeah, that's definitely a point that we talked about, of just talking to everybody else, finding out whether they think what you think is a problem too, and speaking to your seniors like yourself, because they can help make it much more likely to be a success. The last question is really sort of what do you look for in an ideal F1? What do you what do you expect from a new F1 on the ward? What kind of things make them great for you?
I guess that even that word expect made me think a little bit, and you know, and the sort of expectations. I guess it's more, the word I would use is my encouragements. My encouragements to all new healthcare professionals starting in Southmead or other organisations is really to come with an open mind, with honesty and kindness. You know, that's what my, I guess, expectations are, and to be able to ask questions. And I think when I think about my, we were called house officers then, but my first year of being a doctor, I didn't ask enough questions. I had this sense of feeling like I had to know it all, even though I was in my first year of being a doctor. I hope that is different now, and I see that differently in the doctors I work with. But you know, no question is too silly. You know, ask, and also my expectation is to teach me, to, you know, tell me about the things that you guys are learning. You're sort of much closer to the sort of academic learning side than I have been, and so there are always things that I pick up from the doctors I work with. And so that expectation that we are, obviously we have titles. Associate Medical Director sounds very, you know, titly, but we are all colleagues working together, and so that expectation that we've got to help each other.
Yeah, I think that's great. Hopefully that reassures some people that they don't need to turn up for their first job having mastered the art of orthogeriatrics or whatever specialty that they're going into. Absolutely,
I'd be worried if they thought that. So
I completely agree with you. Yeah, and I certainly feel in my experience that I've generally been always able to question my seniors, and they're always much happier, and you always end up being much happier as an F1 when you understand why they asked you to do that, if you didn't know that before, or understand how that problem arose, or whatever the senior was thinking. So I think it's really good advice to just ask lots of questions.
Yeah, completely.
That's basically all my questions. Did you have anything else that you thought would be interesting to talk about, or?
And I think the thing that's on my mind at the moment is sort of well-being, and I'm sure it's something you all talk about in your interactions with each other, and we're kind of at that point at the moment where it can sometimes feel like you've climbed Everest or whatever mountain is your favourite, and often the analogy is on the way down is where something can go amiss, and so just a real encouragement to look after yourselves, to ask for help. If you're feeling something, I can guarantee other people are as well, in terms of doubts and uncertainties, frustration, loss, grief, worry, excitement, opportunities. There's so many things going around in our heads at the moment at this given time. So just really an encouragement to connect with each other and to look after yourselves.
Great. And is there any things that you find particularly helpful for your well-being? What kind of things have you done to keep yourself going throughout your career?
So I'm a runner. I run a lot. This morning, after I dropped my child to holiday club, I was squelching around in all sorts of mud, just around the holiday club for sort of just 20 minutes. I thought, I've got 20 minutes. I'm going to do this before I come into work, and I'm lucky enough to have had the time to do that this morning. So exercise and movement, really important. And being able to connect with people. So what's helped me during this time, because sometimes I have been redeployed and doing different sorts of work, and I've found that the disconnection with the teams I've worked with makes it much harder when things are in some sense of normal to get back into the groove. So just even, a once a week coffee with someone has just helped me keep myself grounded. So and time to do fun things with the family, and to give myself permission to do nothing as well. Is something I'm learning to do. I haven't cracked it yet, but yeah, that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, I think that's definitely good advice for F1s, where you come out with a list of points that you think you need to achieve by the end of F1, whereas just completing the year and remaining happy is the best thing you can possibly do.
Yeah, and finding out what gives you joy.
Great. I've got one last question. And that was really, as an ethnic minority, have you found that that's impacted on your leadership journey or your role? And what advice would you have to students who are ethnic minorities currently, or students or F1s?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think whether you know it or don't, from someone from an ethnic minority background, there are probably biases that you've experienced that don't come from a place of positivity, and discrimination happens. I think I have probably unknowingly been in those situations in my early part of my career, and only more recently felt, you know what, I wonder what was going on there, and that can feel really tough, and can really impact on people's progress. And so I guess my encouragement to students and F1s who are from a minority ethnic background is to know that it is that we are in a situation where these things are happening, and being very open and honest about that is where we as an organisation want to be, so that we can start the conversations about doing things differently. And we in our own organisation have a number of plans about how to address some of these issues that happen in all sorts of organisations across the land, not just healthcare. In terms of what can someone do who is feeling discriminated, or is unsure about whether or not their progress is being hampered in any way, I think being able to find a person to open that conversation up with, whether it's your immediate supervisor or someone you have a relationship with who you feel you can be honest and open and will support you, is the first step, I think. And also connecting with your student and staff networks, if we have a staff network in Southmead for minority ethnic staff, and that has been really helpful in terms of supporting each other, problem solving, raising concerns so that they can go to our leadership team, who are really focused on getting this right. And I'm sure in the university there are similar networks and people like myself championing this work, where I'd really encourage that, and yeah, to find your role models as well, and ask them lots of questions about how they overcome problems of this nature.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. And we're a sway that we're building currently, but should be ready soon, will be a sort of leading with integrity sway. So dealing with that slightly nastier side of medicine, of the bullying, harassment and discrimination, and how as anyone you can try and challenge that, and as you said, be open and honest and try and fix the problem. So thank you so much for speaking to us, Seema. It's been really brilliant.